Welcome to today's deep dive. There is a very specific kind of anxiety that hits you when you walk into a bakery in a foreign country.
Oh, absolutely. The classic morning panic.
Right. You smell the coffee roasting, you see all the pastries lined up behind the glass, and suddenly it's like you realize you are about to perform in a play where you barely know your lines.
Yeah, the barista's just staring at you, and the line of commuters is forming behind you.
Exactly. And you are expected to hit your mark perfectly.
We tend to think of ordering food as a really simple, straightforward transaction. You point, you pay, you eat. But when you are doing it in a second language, it reveals itself as this highly complex social negotiation.
It really is.
It's a high-stakes, low-reward performance. You succeed, you get a croissant, you stumble, you hold up the morning rush hour, and just feel entirely out of place.
So today our mission is to decode a really fascinating source. We are looking at a specialized language learning script, essentially an ESL curriculum design paper that attempts to solve this exact problem.
Which is such a universal problem.
Yeah, it is. We are going to reverse engineer how the syllabus breaks down the psychology, the pacing, and the hidden cultural nuances of ordering breakfast in an English-speaking country.
Because the goal of this script is to take a learner from that state of morning panic to confidently walking into any cafe and ordering exactly what they want.
And whether you crave sweet or savory, breakfast fuels the day. But the linguistic choreography required to get it is surprisingly intricate. So let's start with the sheer speed of the interaction.
Right, because the curriculum we are analyzing makes a very deliberate choice in how it introduces audio to the learner.
It uses a dual speed method.
Exactly. The speed of delivery is usually where the vast majority of language learners just immediately hit a wall. Native speakers in a bustling environment do not speak in clean, isolated words.
No, they blend everything together.
Right. They use connected speech, blending sounds together at about 140 to 150 words per minute.
Which is incredibly fast if you aren't used to it.
To a non-native ear, that speed makes an entire sentence sound like one long, incomprehensible word. So the source material approaches this barrier by staging a role play at a fictional location called Sonny's Bakery.
Okay.
But crucially, it plays the scenario first at a highly deliberate 100 words per minute and only later replays it at the natural conversational speed.
I was looking at that processing gap, and it makes me think about how we acquire complex physical skills.
Oh, how so?
Well, learning this dialogue at 100 words per minute is akin to practicing a complex dance routine in slow motion.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, you have to establish the footwork, the exact placement of your balance before you can perform it to the actual tempo of the music.
That makes perfect sense.
If a learner tries to jump straight into 150 words per minute, their cognitive load just maxes out. They simply cannot translate and formulate a response fast enough before the barista has moved on to the next question.
Right. But at 100 words per minute, the boundaries between words actually become audible. The learner's brain has the processing power to decode the phonemes, access their mental dictionary, comprehend the meaning, and then, formulate a response.
Because at the normal speed, the barista is firing off the opening gambit of the interaction, the very first of our 6 key phrases.
Right, phrase 1.
The barista asks questions like, "What can I get for you today? What can I do for you today?" Or, "What would you like?"
And they are demanding an almost instantaneous reply.
Which brings us to phrase 2. The response the curriculum forces the learner to memorize right out of the gate is very specific. "I'd like a coffee and a croissant, please."
Yep, I'd like.
And I want to push back on that for a second. For anyone studying linguistics, we know "I want" violates the politeness maxims of Western customer service. But from a purely pedagogical standpoint, why is it so important to respond with "I'd like" instead of just saying "I want"?
That's a great question.
I want is a direct, simple subject-verb construction. Why complicate a beginner's mental load with a conditional auxiliary verb before they have even mastered basic present tense vocabulary?
Well, the curriculum is prioritizing communicative competence over grammatical simplicity.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Sure. So in some cultures and languages, using a direct command like "give me" or "I want" is perfectly acceptable. The politeness is encoded in the speaker's intonation, or is simply implied by the context of being a paying customer.
Right, you're handing them money, so the politeness is assumed.
Exactly. In English, however, politeness in retail settings is encoded structurally through modal verbs. "I'd like" functions as a crucial, polite softening phrase.
It sets the tone.
It establishes a respectful, collaborative tone for the rest of the exchange. You are communicating, I would like this if it is possible and pleases you. Yeah, if a learner uses I want, even with a smile, it can sound abrasive to the ear of an English-speaking barista. Teaching the conditional phrase immediately establishes the vital social contract of the space. You are not demanding sustenance, you are politely requesting a transaction.
It's the social lubricant that keeps the line moving without friction.
Exactly.
But once that power dynamic is established and you have successfully made your polite request, the interaction inevitably shifts. The initial order is made, the negotiation is over, and the barista takes control of the agenda.
Because the shop owner now shifts the focus to maximizing the transaction.
The upsell.
Right. In the Sonny's Bakery scenario, the barista tempts the customer by listing fresh sandwiches and muffins. This brings us to phrase 3. Would you like anything else?
And in the script, this prompts the customer to eventually add a blueberry muffin to their order.
Yes, but importantly, the script also teaches polite ways to decline. Things like, no thank you, that's all, or that'll be all for now, thanks.
And I find this really interesting because, honestly, when you are ordering in a second language, an unexpected question like, would you like anything else, can feel like a high-pressure trap.
Oh, absolutely. It causes total panic.
So how can a learner handle this gracefully without freezing up? Shouldn't a rigorous syllabus force them to engage with the upsell, ask questions about the menu, and learn the vocabulary for the muffins and the upcharges?
You would think so, but it actually comes down to managing the effective filter in language acquisition.
An effective filter.
Yeah, it's essentially a psychological barrier. When anxiety or stress is high, a learner's ability to process and produce language effectively shuts down.
Oh, wow. So they literally can't speak.
Exactly. An unexpected question from a native speaker introduces a massive spike in cognitive load. The brain is already working overtime just to maintain the interaction. If the curriculum forced a beginner to navigate an unscripted conversation about pastry options,
while the clock is ticking and the line of commuters is glaring at them,
right, panic would set in. So the goal here is survival, not necessarily culinary exploration.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
The text teaches learners to synthesize this by recognizing the upsell, not as a terrifying demand for new vocabulary, but as a simple binary yes or no question.
So it removes the pressure.
Exactly. You don't need a complex vocabulary to navigate it. By having a default, polite, pre-planned no thank you loaded into working memory, the learner neutralizes the trap. They don't have to invent a complex escape route on the fly.
They just deploy the phrase and survive the hurdle.
Yes. And later, as their proficiency grows, they can begin substituting yes and asking for the blueberry muffin. But the foundational skill is keeping the rhythm of the interaction moving.
Right. By deploying that no thank you shield, you prevent the barista from derailing your rhythm. But maintaining that rapid-fire pace becomes even harder when the conversation moves from hypothetical food to physical logistics.
The logistics are crucial.
The spatial reality of the cafe dictates the next hurdle.
Right, because the cafe needs to know how to package the items. They need to know if they're providing a ceramic mug and a plate for a seated customer, or a paper cup and a paper bag for someone leaving.
Which completely alters their physical workflow behind the counter.
Exactly. So the barista asks phrase 4, is that for here or to go? And the source also notes a very prevalent British English variation of this inquiry, to eat in or take away.
And the customer responds with phrase 5. To go, please. I'm in a bit of a hurry, or I'm running a little late.
Yes.
And including, I'm in a bit of a hurry, is such a fascinating strategic choice to me. It almost feels like the customer is wresting control of the pacing back from the barista.
Oh, for sure.
You are verbally signaling to the person behind the counter that small talk needs to be suspended and efficiency is the priority.
It manages expectations on both sides of the counter. It tells the barista to prioritize speed, which in turn reduces the likelihood that they will try to engage the non-native speaker in further spontaneous conversation.
It acts as a polite boundary.
Exactly. And that boundary transitions the interaction into its final, most physical stage, the actual exchange of currency and the social closing.
This is where physical objects disrupt the linguistic flow. In our Sonny's Bakery scenario, the total comes to $8.50. The customer hands over a $10 bill.
Which brings us to phrase 6.
Right. You hand over the money and say, here you go, and the barista replies, here's your change, giving back the remaining $1.50.
And the text lists alternatives too, like, here you are, or there you go.
I just have to point out how funny the phrase, here you go is. It is incredibly casual, but it's used universally. It's essentially the Swiss Army knife of English transactional phrases.
It really is.
You use it for handing over a coffee, handing over a $10 bill, or handing over a printed receipt. But it raises a question about register for me. Is it possible to sound too formal when paying for a muffin? Like, what happens if someone approaches the counter and says, "I hereby present you with these $10"?
I mean, you would definitely get some weird looks. Over-formalizing the payment process actually disrupts the societal metronome of the environment.
The metronome, I like that.
Yeah, transactional English relies heavily on these casual, almost reflexive phrases because they act as linguistic shortcuts.
Yeah.
Remember that 150-word per minute pace we discussed earlier?
Of course.
That pace dictates the entire macroeconomy of a morning rush. Here you go. Is not just casual, it is rhythmically calibrated. The phrase perfectly matches the physical duration of extending an arm and handing over a physical object.
So it's a verbal handshake.
Exactly. It acknowledges the transfer of possession without adding unnecessary syllables that would slow down the choreography of the line.
The words literally act as the soundtrack to the physical movement. You hand the cash over on the downbeat.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And then the curtain falls on the entire performance with the goodbyes. The barista says, "Enjoy your breakfast," or "Have a great day."
And the mandated reflexive reply is, "Thank you, you too."
It completes the loop of politeness that was initiated with, "I'd like."
The customer enters the interaction politely, exits politely, and the social contract of the cafe is maintained, allowing the barista to seamlessly turn to the next person in line and restart the entire script.
It is a complete, self-contained little universe with strict rules. But so far, we have only been analyzing the ecosystem of Western bakeries.
Right.
The words we use are intimately tied not just to what we eat, but to the physical infrastructure of how we pay. And the source material takes a fascinating pivot here to explore how the language of breakfast shifts across different cultures.
It's a really stark contrast.
Specifically, it contrasts Western habits with Chinese morning rituals.
The contrast illustrates how deeply language is shaped by technological infrastructure. Because in China, the morning ritual often involves stopping at a fast-paced street stall for items like congee, yuqiao, baozi, or a jianbing.
And the script describes the jianbing as this amazing, savory Chinese crepe layered with egg, sauces, and crispy fillings.
It's delicious.
The culinary difference is obvious. We are swapping sweet croissants for savory crepes. But the critical distinction the paper highlights is the environment of the transaction itself. You are grabbing this food from a street-side vendor, and you are paying instantly with a smartphone using platforms like WeChat or Alipay.
Right, the physical exchange of cash is entirely absent.
So how does that change the language?
Well, the digital infrastructure in China has essentially eradicated the need for the "here you go and here's your change" portion of the dialogue.
Because the app does it all.
Exactly. The transaction is silent, instantaneous, and completely frictionless. The digital platform handles the trust, the math, and the transfer of possession.
Contrast that with the Western menu of coffee, tea, and muffins. You're often stepping inside a physical brick-and-mortar space. And while credit cards and mobile tap-to-pay are super common in the West, the curriculum explicitly warns learners about a specific phrase.
Oh, right. At small, independent bakeries, you might still encounter the phrase, "Sorry, cash only."
Which is a jarring reality for someone accustomed to scanning a QR code without even breaking their walking stride.
Oh, absolutely.
The efficiency of the Jianbing street stall experience is built on pure momentum. If you take a learner who is used to that hyperspeed, frictionless digital economy and place them in a Western bakery where someone is slowly counting out $1.50 in physical coins,
The cultural whiplash must be intense.
it really must be. And it makes me wonder about the phrase we dissected earlier, "I'm in a hurry." Because the Chinese mobile payment system is so blindingly fast, does that make the English phrase, "I'm in a hurry," even more essential for someone adapting to a slower, cash-only Western bakery line?
I'd argue it becomes a vital piece of verbal infrastructure.
How so?
If you are accustomed to a transaction that takes 3 seconds and requires no physical exchange of currency, standing in a cash-only line feels excruciatingly inefficient. The digital infrastructure that once did the heavy lifting is gone.
So they have to compensate.
Yes. The phrase, "I'm in a hurry," acts as a compensatory tool. The speaker is using language to try and artificially recreate the physical speed they are accustomed to in their native digital environment. They're basically using words to try and accelerate the analog world.
That is fascinating. Understanding that cultural context and knowing the sociology behind these phrases intellectually is great. I mean, I could sit here and analyze the societal implications of a vocabulary list all day long.
Same here.
But the curriculum explicitly notes that theoretical knowledge does not translate to real-world fluency. Real confidence on the ground requires active vocal practice.
Which is why the pedagogical tools embedded at the end of the source material are so brilliant. They were designed to bridge the gap between passive comprehension and active production.
Let's unpack those tools because they focus heavily on building muscle memory.
Right. The curriculum features a repeat after me challenge. But crucially, the audio does not just read the sentences in rapid succession.
It leaves spaces.
Exactly. It leaves deliberate 2 to 3 second pauses of dead air after each sentence, requiring the listener to practice speaking the words out loud into the silence.
I love that technique. It functions exactly like the blank space in a crossword puzzle.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, if you just look at a crossword puzzle that is already filled in with all the correct answers, you might nod to yourself and think, oh, I possess all that vocabulary. But you didn't actually do the cognitive work of retrieving it. The blank space forces the brain to search, retrieve, and execute.
And that mechanism is known in cognitive psychology as desirable difficulty. It is the very foundation of active recall.
Desirable difficulty.
Yeah. When a learner passively listens to a phrase like, I'd like a coffee, their brain's recognition pathways are engaged, but their production pathways remain entirely dormant.
Creating an illusion of competence.
Precisely. The silence, that 2-second pause, forces the learner's motor cortex and language production centers to fire.
Yeah.
They have to physically manipulate their lips, tongue, and vocal cords to produce the specific English phones.
They have to physically struggle with it.
Right. The brain only builds robust myelin sheaths around those new neural pathways when it has to struggle slightly to retrieve and physically produce the information.
The learning literally happens in the silence. But the curriculum doesn't just stop at rote repetition. It pushes the learner one step further at the very end to summarize those 6 key phrases.
It does. It concludes with a question of the day challenge for the audience.
Prompting them to write down their own customized order in the comments section.
Right. They are asked, what would you like to order for breakfast today? And they're given templates like, I'll take a tea and a blueberry muffin.
Which I imagine fundamentally changes how they interact with the material.
Oh, completely. It transitions the learner from rote memorization to generative language use. By physically typing out a customized order, they are taking the structural framework they just practiced, I'll take a pow, or I'd like a, and applying it to their own personal desires.
They are making the language serve their own autonomy.
Exactly. It fundamentally shifts their role from a passive observer of Sonny's bakery into an active decision-making participant in their own learning journey.
You practice the footwork in slow motion, you execute the steps in the silence, and then you visualize yourself taking the stage.
That's the progression.
So let's look back at the mechanics we have uncovered today. We explored why slowing down to 100 words per minute is essential for penetrating the wall of connected speech.
We debated the pedagogical necessity of learning the no thank you escape hatch to prevent cognitive overload during an aggressive upsell.
We examined the rhythmic, physical choreography of handing over cash and how digital infrastructure in places like China is rendering those specific transactional phrases obsolete.
We have taken a micro-interaction, a fleeting, seemingly insignificant exchange that happens millions of times every single morning, and decoded the complex sociology, psychology, and linguistics operating beneath its surface.
It really demonstrates how intimidating unstructured social environments can be broken down into predictable, manageable components.
It definitely demystifies the process.
And it leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to ponder. This script teaches you how to buy a croissant, sure, but it also reveals a secret about human interaction. Consider how much of our daily, so-called native communication is not actually spontaneous, but rather a highly predictable script of 6 or 7 phrases.
Wow, that's true.
We walk around deploying these scripts like dialogue trees in a video game, barely thinking about the words coming out of our mouths. So if a learner can master the hidden dialogue tree of a busy bakery, it begs a much larger question.
What's that?
What other intimidating, high-stakes, real-world scenarios, a job interview, a tense networking event, or even a daunting doctor's appointment, could you conquer just by stripping away the anxiety and uncovering the specific hidden script running underneath it all?
That changes how you look at everything.
Keep looking for the scripts around you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.